Stanford University.
Okay, well, welcome to Stanford CS 193P, Developing Applications for iOS, winter of 2017. This is lecture number 15, and our only topic today is segues. This is the segues lecture. So you've learned show segues and show detail segues, which work in navigation controllers and split view controllers. And now we're going to learn all the rest of the kinds of segues that you can use to build your application. So let's start with modal segue. So now a modal segue is an interesting one. When you segue modally, you take an MVC that you're segueing to, and it takes over the entire screen. Okay? That's why it's called modal, because you're in a mode where you can only interact with that MVC. There's no back button, there's no tab bar to click on, there's no way to do anything else in the app except for what that MVC is doing. So why would you ever want to do this? Well, sometimes you get to a point in your application where you need some information from your user and you just can't proceed without it. So my example here is, let's say I'm in a contacts app, like the contacts app on your phone, and you get to a point here where you're looking at your contacts and you say, well, I want to add a contact. Right? So you're going to press this little plus button in the upper right-hand corner. And when you do that, a whole new MVC, the add contact MVC, slides up from the bottom. And you'll notice there's no back button there because I'm not in a navigation controller where I pushed. And instead of a back button, this one happens to have a cancel button right here. But there's nothing I can do now with this application except for what's on this screen. So I could fill out the fields there to add a contact. I could hit cancel or done. That's all I can do. And it's perfectly fine to have a modal MVC that brings up another modal MVC. In fact, this one does. I'm adding a new contact here, and I'm going to add a photo for my contact. So I'm going to click this add photo button right here. And when I do, another MVC, presumably the camera or the photo library, photo choosing MVC, comes up on top. And again, I can't do anything now until I've dealt with this. And presumably I could take a photo. That would be one way to get out of this. Or I could hit cancel. So let's go ahead and hit cancel on this one. When we do that, we go back to the previous modal one. And here, if we hit cancel on this one, we're going to go back to the original one that we had, right? So see what a modal view controller is. It kind of takes over your app for a little bit. Now, you got to think a little bit about modal view controllers. They're so easy to put up that they can be abused a little bit. Users tend to be slightly disconcerted by modal MVCs, okay? Because they get comfortable with their app and they know where the tabs are and they know how to go backwards and forwards in navigation controllers. And then all of a sudden, all they can do is this one thing. Now, sometimes it makes perfect sense, like add contact. Of course, the user understands I'm adding a contact. I can't click over and do something else. Although some users might say, why can't I click over to this other thing right now? Or I need to do that to add this contact or whatever. So I try to stay away from modal view controllers as much as possible, put things in navigation controllers and tab bar controllers and things like that. But there are times when it's absolutely necessary. So how do you set one of these modal segues up? Super easy. You just control drag. And when you control drag, instead of saying show or detail, you're going to say present modally. Now, normally, as with any segue, you're going to be segueing from like a bar button item or just a regular button or a row in a table view. But if for some reason you want to put something up modally from something else, basically from code, you don't forget about this method that I actually talked about in a previous lecture called perform segue with identifier. You can set up a segue in your storyboard by just control dragging from the little view controller icon at the top of your scene, that little yellow thing. It's at the very top part of any scene in your storyboard. You can control drag from that to any other MVC, set it to be present modal, and then inspect that segue, give it an identifier, and then call this method in your code. And it will cause that segue to happen, and that MVC will appear modally. Also, if you happen to have a view controller in your hand, like you have a local variable or something that has a view controller in it, which, by the way, when would that ever happen? Have we seen that happen? I don't think we have yet. But there are various iOS API that will give you back a view controller. Like on Wednesday, we're going to talk about alerts and action sheets. They will give you an MVC, which is basically an alert that you're going to put up on the screen. Also, if you want to take a picture with the camera, you're going to get this UI image picker controller, which is an MVC, and you're going to put it up. And the way you put that up, okay, anytime you have an MVC in your hand in a var, not in the storyboard, but it might be something you created out of the storyboard, but it's in a var, you just do present. So these are both view controller methods up here, these yellow things. And present just takes the view controller you want to present, whether you want to animate it appearing on screen, which you usually do, and then a completion handler. When the animation's done, it'll call a completion handler. Often we just ignore that. That's why it defaults to nil there. Okay? Now, when you are causing this modal thing to appear, when it appears, it can actually appear in different forms. One way is it can cover the entire screen, which you're going to always see in trait collections where it's horizontally compact. Okay, so that's like iPhone, all right, or master maybe of an iPad. In a horizontally compact environment, it's going to kind of cover up the whole space. But in other places, you might want it to appear as a popover, okay? Or you might even want to appear as kind of a form sheet, a smaller than the huge iPad screen. So when you set up your Segue, you can go and inspect it, and you can set how you want it to appear, okay? And you can just take a look at those, try them out, page sheet and form sheet, and see what they look like and see which one you like there. So that's what it's going to look like when it gets there. In horizontally compact environments, okay, really narrow environments, it's always by default going to adapt to full screen, no matter what you put in there. But I'm going to show you, hopefully if we have time in the demo, how you can override that adapting that behavior, that automatic adapting behavior. Preparing for a modal segue, it's exactly the same as any other segue you've ever seen, right? You just check the identifier, see if the destination is the thing you're looking for, and then prepare it. What about hearing back from a modal MVC? So you put a modal MVC up like that contacts thing, and it collects all the information for the new contact. How do you communicate back? Here's the new contact, okay? So there's a couple of things there. One, you know, that new contact thing might just be creating that contact in a database, and you don't need to do anything. You just dismiss the modal view controller, and when it comes back, the other view controller is looking in the same database, and it sees it appear. It's probably using a fetch results controller or something like that, and it sees it appears and magically just works. But sometimes you might be creating something where you do need to communicate back, and you're going to use an unwind segue for that. And I'm going to talk about unwind in a few slides here, but that's how you're going to communicate back from a modal view controller. How do you get the modal view controller to go away, like when you hit the cancel button? The answer is that the presenting view controller, the view controller that puts it up, okay, the thing you segue from, that thing is responsible for dismissing it. And it does it with this method, dismiss animated, okay? And that, when you send dismiss to an MVC, it means dismiss any view controller I've put up. That's what this means, okay? Dismiss ones I've put up. And the good news is, okay, a lot of times you want to do this in the cancel button of the thing that was presented, but of course it can't send this to itself. But luckily, every view controller knows who presented it. So it can just get its presenting view controller. There's a var called presenting view controller, and it can send dismiss to its presenting view controller. You'll see that in the demo as well. Unwind segues, by the way, which again I'm going to talk about in a minute, they automatically dismiss. So you do not have to call dismiss if you unwind to communicate information back. Now, not only can you control what the modal view controller is going to look like when it's up, whether it's full screen or whatever, but you can also control how it animates to come up. And it's the same things we saw with the other one. You can flip to have it appear. It can cross dissolve in there. It can slide up from the bottom. That's cover vertical. That's the default. And you can even do that partial curl where it will kind of lift it up like it's a piece of paper and see the new one in behind. In all cases, though, no matter how it animates on or no matter how it shows, it's modal. Only that new MVC can be interacted with. Okay, the other MVCs, like the one that presented it, are kind of temporarily disabled. All right, let's talk about that unwind segue. This unwinding is the only segue in iOS that does not create a new MVC. Okay, doing a modal segue, it creates a new MVC. Show segue, new MVC. Popover, new MVC. But unwind does not, because in unwind, you're segueing back to some MVC that already exists that has presented you. Okay? Now, what's it good for, this unwind? It's good for communicating back from a modal. It's also good if you have a navigation controller with a whole bunch of things on the stack and you want to jump back more than one. You want to do more than just one back button's worth. You want to jump back 3 levels. You can unwind back up your stack because when you have a navigation controller, all the MVCs higher on the stack are considered to have presented you by pushing you on the stack, okay? Which they did. They segued to you with a show or whatever. So that's what unwind is mostly good for. How does it work? Well, you don't control drag from the button or whatever you want to do the unwind to the MVC you want. Instead, you're going to control drag to this little orange button at the top. You've probably seen this button and said, what is that thing? It has a tooltip that says exit. And indeed, that's what you do. When you control drag to this thing, you're creating a segue that is going to exit this MVC. Okay? Now, how do you decide where you're going to go when you exit? Well, you're going to do that because you're going to create a special method in another MVC. And whenever you create this special method in any MVC, it gets added to a list inside of Xcode. And so when you control drag to exit, that list is going to appear. And you can see I only have one of them here. It's called go back. Now I'm control dragging from a table view row, so I've got the accessory one and the main table view row one there. But go back is the only one. So when I choose this go back, I'm basically saying that I want to segue to some MVC that presented me that implements the go back method. Okay, that's how unwind works. Now, let's look at kind of how the code behind all this works. So in the presenter, the one you're going to unwind to, you have to create a method, and this method has to have 2 important things. 1, it has to be marked @IB action. And 2, its argument, and it can only have 1 argument, and must have 1 argument, and that argument must be of type UI storyboard segue, because you're going to be segueing to this thing. Okay, so that's in the view controller you're going to unwind to, that you're segueing to. So the code for this kind of looks like this. In the prepare of the presenter, so that of the presented, the prepare of the thing that's going to be doing the unwind, because it's going to be segueing, it gets to prepare. So it has normal prepare, and you can check its identifier. And when you're in prepare, the segue's destination is going to be the presenter, the view controller you're going to unwind to. So this code goes in the presented view controller, the modal view controller, whatever that you're going to unwind from. Then back in the presenter, you have code that looks like this. The special method with the @IB action and the UI storyboard segue. And inside there, very interestingly, you're going to look at the segue's source. You know that we're used to looking at segue destination. That's the view controller we are segueing to. Segue source is the source of the segue. So that's the MVC we're segueing from. So in an unwind situation, if we're in the go back method, this go back method goes inside the presenter right there. The source of the segue is the modal one. And when you do unwind, you'll automatically get dismissed. See how I disappeared there? I'll get dismissed, and the presenter will have his go back special method called. Okay? So this is how unwind plays out. It's all about that special method in the presenter. All right, another segue is the popover segue. I'm sure you've all seen this. Here's a popover. This popover is presenting an MVC, which is some kind of search for appointment MVC there in some calendar app or something like that. And so that's the MVC that's being presented. Now, when you notice when it's being presented, it's in this little white box, and there's a little triangle. See that little tiny little triangle there? It's pointing to the UI element that caused the popover to come up. So that's usually a bar button item or a button, but it can actually point to any rectangle in any view. Okay, so for example, if you had an iBooks-like app and you have text and you double-clicked on a word and you hit define, it could bring up a popover where the little arrow is pointing at the word you're defining. You see? So it can point to anything that you want there. And notice also that the rest of the UI is kind of grayed out a little bit, right? The stuff that's not the MVC that's being presented in the popover is kind of grayed out. And in fact, if you click there, it will dismiss the popover. So this is also modal. A popover is also modal You can only interact with what's in that popover. If you try to click on anything else, it's going to dismiss the popover and exit the modal state. Okay, you've probably noticed this from using various iPad apps. By the way, the popover, mostly iPad only, but not always. You can actually do popovers on the iPhone. I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So yeah, popover, just like modal, you control drag. You're just going to set its type to be popover instead of present modal. When you're preparing for a popover, there's a few extra things you can do. Okay, so all of these presentations, anytime you go modal or you even push in a navigation controller, these are all managed by a class called a UI presentation controller. It controls the presentation of an MVC. Now, we're not going to have time to talk about that. You can actually build your own presentation controllers that present MVCs in other ways that you want. It's pretty rare to do it, but you see it sometimes in apps where things slide out in a certain way or whatever. But in the popover case, we're just going to talk about this presentation controller a little bit because there's a subclass of it called UI popover presentation controller, and it has a few interesting vars in it, like what direction is the arrow from the popover allowed to point? Okay, the system automatically figures out where to bring the popover up, but it'll try to make the arrow point in one of the directions that you allow. Also, this is where this popover presentation controller is the thing where you specify the rectangle and view that the arrow should point at if it's not pointing at a bar button item or a button or something like that. And where do you configure all this UI popover presentation controller stuff? You do it in your prepare. When you prepare for a popover segue, you're going to do that. So the code looks kind of like this. Here's a typical prepare for segue that is preparing for a popover segue. It looks the same. All the green is the same as any other segue, but then there's the yellow that's different. I'm creating this local variable. I'm calling it PPC so that it fits on my slide, but that's not a good variable name. But anyway, PPC equals VC, which is the view controller that I'm segueing to. Give me its popover presentation controller. Okay, and I get that popover presentation controller, and you can go look at the documentation for it, but one of the things it can do is permitted arrow directions will let you set the arrow direction to right, left, right, up, down, or here I've set it to any, which means I'll let the arrow point in any direction. All right? In addition to doing things like arrow directions, this popover presentation controller also has a delegate. Now, why does it need a delegate? Well, the delegate is used to control this adaptation behavior. Now, the popover, when you have a popover, you'd like to have your storyboard just have a popover so that when it works on iPad, it's nice, it's in a popover. But when you're on iPhone, especially when you're in a horizontally compact environment, you don't want to use a popover. There's usually not enough room. It's just too crowded to put a popover in there. Instead, you want to do this full screen. And as I said before, the system will automatically adapt to the fact that you're in a horizontally compact environment, and it will make it full screen instead. But via this delegate, this popover presentation controller delegate, you can control that adaptation behavior. You can prevent it, you can modify it. So let's talk a little bit about how that works. So this adaptation to the size classes, let's just look at the code right out the bat. This delegate method of the popover presentation controller is called adaptive presentation style for controller trait collection. And what this is basically asking is, I'm about to present this controller, the argument there, in an environment with this trait collection. Remember, trait collections are like horizontal size class, vertical size class. And it's asking you to return what kind of adaptation you want to do. So you can return none, and it will not adapt. It'll just do it like a popover. So this is how you could get a popover on an iPhone. Just implement this delegate method and return none. Okay, .none. If you do that, it won't adapt. Now, you could return other things in here like .full screen or .over full screen. And by doing so, you control how the popover is going to look and adapt to different trait collections. Okay? And hopefully we'll have time for that in the demo. Maybe not, but we'll see. The other thing you can do, which is kind of cool when it adapts, is I might have a popover. And since popovers don't have cancel buttons, they don't need cancel buttons because I can touch anywhere outside the popover and it cancels it. Okay, so I don't need a cancel button. But when it adapts to full screen modal on an iPhone, I do need a cancel button because I can't click anywhere else. It's taken over my entire screen. So I want to put a cancel button. So to put a cancel button up there, maybe I want to put it in a navigation controller so that I can fit a cancel button at the top, a bar button item, right? I mean, I could put the cancel button somewhere inside my view controller and then just take it out when I'm on iPad, iPhone, or whatever. But maybe what I want to do is have it be in the navigation bar of a navigation controller, but again, only when I'm adapting. And so this will let you do that. This one, called Presentation Controller View Controller for Adaptive Presentation Style, is saying what view controller should I use when I adapt to this presentation style. Okay? And that presentation style is something like over full screen, or popover, or full screen. And so here is where you might want to say, I'm going to return a navigation controller with the controller that would normally just appear in a popover inside of it as its root view controller. Okay, so this is a kind of cool way to substitute another, like usually a navigation controller, another MVC that you can wrap around the MVC you're trying to present. So the return value of this is actually another view controller. Okay, so that's kind of fun controlling that adaptation stuff. But there's another important issue about popovers, by the way, which is their size. Now, by default, a popover comes up in a size that kind of is like an iPhone in portrait. That's kind of its default size. And if it doesn't really know what size the stuff is inside, that's the best it can do. But you can control that size and make it a lot better by having the MVC that's being presented implement or set this var called preferred content size. And that just says, this is the size I want to be in a popover, basically, or in any environment, really. But this is my preferred size to be. And so, again, if we have time, we can do this in our demo as well. You want to return here the smallest size that you look good in. And then when your popover comes up, it'll use this size. If you don't set this size, you're going to kind of get this default size. Depends on whether you're in portrait, landscape, iPad, whatever. It's going to kind of give you a somewhat standardized size. Okay, the last segue we're going to talk about here is embed segues. These are really cool, really powerful segues. It's basically a segue where you put another MVC's self.view, its top-level view, inside another view hierarchy. So this is embedding view controllers inside other view controllers. Okay, really cool thing to be able to do. And Xcode makes this super easy. You're just going to go down to your object palette and look for container view and drag that container view out. It looks just like a view. You're going to put auto layout on it, whatever you want, and its self.view is going to appear embedded in the view hierarchy of the thing you dragged it into. It's really quite a normal segue. It seems weird because it's like you're embedding this thing, but it's a fairly normal segue in there. You can name it. You get prepare. You get to do prepare for segue and all that stuff. You can see here the little gray thing that says container. That's what's the view that's appearing inside the big light blue view hierarchy on the left. And then on the right is just an entire MVC that you get to configure any class you want, any UI you want to put in there. And that's all just going to appear inside that box inside on the blue side. Okay. One thing to be really careful about embed segues, it's no different than any other segue in that when it happens, when the prepare happens, none of the outlets are set in that MVC that you're embedding. Okay? So a lot of times people, they're embedding this other MVC and they want to be setting all kinds of outlet in the thing they're embedding, which you can't because none of those outlets have been set. You're in prepare, you're really early. So almost always what we do here is we grab the entire MVC in prepare and hold on to it. And then later, in our own view did load, when all the outlets loaded, then we start talking to the MVC and tell it to set its outlets or whatever. So 90% of the time in the prepare for an embed segue, we grab onto the MVC that we're embedding. Okay, which is just going to be the segue's destination, right? That's the MVC we're segueing to. Now I'm going to do all demo the rest of the way here. So I'm going to give you a little what's coming up here. So on Wednesday, I'm going to be talking about alerts and action sheets and also notifications and the application lifecycle. So application lifecycle is all those methods in App Delegate. Next week on Monday is the accessibility lecture. Also Monday, slides are due if you want to participate in the alternate final. You have to submit them by Monday. If you don't submit them by Monday, then sorry, you can't do the alternate final. But then that's the only thing you do. You don't have to sign up or anything. Just submit your slides by Monday. And then Wednesday will be the alternate final next week. So the demo I'm going to do right now is we're going to take Faceit, okay, and we're going to add all 4 of those segues to it. Okay, all the 4 segues I just talked about, we're going to put them all in there in one little app here. So let's go over to Faceit. So here's Faceit. All right, so you guys remember Face It, very simple little app. It had this little emotions view controller, and we had 3 emotions, sad, happy, and worried. And when we clicked on it, it would show a face that showed that emotion. So I'm going to actually, before I dive into these segues, kind of enhance our this whole app slightly. One thing is, remember when we did our face view controller way back when, and we wanted to do squinting, but we couldn't do squinting. Remember why? Because our face view only could do eyes open or eyes closed. So we really didn't have an option to do squinting. So we just kind of had this, okay, well, we'll just say the eyes are closed. Okay, we had to punt, essentially. So I'm going to make it so we don't have to punt. What I'm going to do is, remember we did that blinking face view controller? I'm going to make squinting be blinking. Okay, squinting and blinking aren't the same thing, but kind of like repeatedly squinting. So we're going to make it so that works. So how are we going to do that? So we no longer have to punt here. So we'll just not do anything if someone says squinting. And remember that all of our blinking code is in this subclass here, blinking face view controller. So we'll go ahead and make our update UI overrideable. And we'll go to our blinking face view controller here and override it. So I'm just going to override update UI. Of course, I want to call override func, update UI. And of course, I want to call my supers update UI so that the mouth and other stuff and the eyes themselves can all be set. But then I'm going to say that my blinking, whether or not I'm blinking, is equal to our model, which is our expressions, eyes, if those are equal to squinting. So if we're squinting, then I'm going to be blinking. You see what I did there? So that's it. So I just upgraded blinking face view controller. Now if you set your model to have squinting as your part of your model, then it will blink. Now we made this blink view controller kind of a demo thing. I made it every time it appears, it starts blinking. Every time it disappears, it stops blinking. Well, I don't really want that now. Now I want it to blink when it's squinting and not otherwise. But I also still only want it to blink when I'm on screen. I don't want my timer running, blinking when I'm not even appeared. So I'm going to change this blinking thing here to be can blink. So let's add a new private var up here, can blink, which will start out as false. And so here, if I appear, I'll say I can blink, and I'll even say blink if needed at this point, because maybe someone sent us to blinking while we weren't there. And when we disappear, I'm going to say can blink equals false, so I'm not allowed to blink. And then in blink if needed, I'll just say if I'm blinking and I can blink, then I'll go ahead and do my blinking. One other little thing that I want to do here is to not, if I'm in the middle of a blink, okay, this timer, and I get another request to blink, I don't want to start another timer. Okay, so I'm going to have another private var here, which I'm going to call in a blink, which is whether I'm in the middle of a blink. Start that as false. And so I'll also check it here, and we're not in a blink. So then I'll just set in a blink here to true, and then when we get out the other side down here, I'll set in a blink to false. So all I did was upgrade my blink view controller to be able to be controlled by its model rather than being a demo thing. Everybody cool with what I did there? Minor little upgrade. Now, the next thing I want to do is, what we're going to do for our demo of segues is, we're going to, if you remember in this, let's self question mark here. If you remember in our storyboard here, we're kind of fixed to these 3 different emotions. That's all we have. Well, I'm going to make it so that we can hit an add button and add another emotion. Okay, as many emotions as we want. That's what we're going to do. So we're going to have a modal segue to that thing. We'll unwind to bring it back. We'll make it work on Popover. We'll embed the little blinking face view in it. We're going to do all kinds of segue stuff here. But first we have to convert this to something that we can add more to. So we can't have these 3 buttons like this. This is clearly not going to work. So we need a different kind. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, there's not much code in this emotions view controller as it is. It's just got this little dictionary of the 3 things, and then it does prepare. So I'll keep as much code as I can here. But what I'm going to do is make it a table view controller. Okay, so I'm just going to turn this emotions thing into a table view controller because it's really easy to add more rows. So I'm just going to say this is a UI table view controller instead. And I'm going to have to change my model a little bit here from being a dictionary. I'm just going to have it be an array of tuples, where this name of the emotion and then the expression are in a tuple. And we'll have it in an array like that. So I'm just going to replace this whole thing with an array of tuples. But otherwise, it's the same exact data. It's just this. It's an array of tuples, where one thing is the name, like sad, happy, and the other is the expression, the eyes and mouth, or whatever. Since I've also made this a var so that we can add more of them to it over time. Okay, now we, of course, this broke our prepare, but we'll fix that in a second. Let's go back to our storyboard and add this thing. So I'm going to make it a table view, so let's go over here to our utilities window and grab ourselves a table view controller and put it out here. Here's our table view. Of course, I want to set its identity to be this emotions view controller, which I can do because I changed it to be a table view. And it's real easy to make it back to being the root view controller of this navigation controller. Hook that up. And remember, we had these 3 segues that would segue from those 3 separate buttons over here. Well, I still am going to need to segue because I got to show the emotion. So I'm just going to control drag over to here and create a new segue. I'm in a split view here, so it's going to be show detail. And we'll call this one right here, this segue, how about show emotion? That's what it does, right? It shows an emotion when you click on it. And we'll want to configure this table view as well right here. We'll have the cells be just basic, one piece of text in there. That's be like happy or sad or whatever. And we'll have a reuse identifier here be like emotion cell, let's say. Okay? Everybody cool with all that? Maybe we'll even put the title. We have this title, if you remember, emotions, the name of that table right there. So that's all we need to do to fix our UI. And so we just need to fix our emotions view controller to be a table view controller now instead of this old kind of thing that it was before. So let's go ahead and fix this navigation first. Remember, in that case, we were using the identifier of the segue to figure out whether we were sad, happy, or whatever. In this case, we're just going to look at the row and index it into our nice new model up here. So we can get rid of this let identifier equals identifier, and clearly we're not getting the expression using that dictionary anymore. So everyone remembers table view. We just want to get the cell, so we're going to let the cell equal the sender as a UI table view cell. And then we want to get the index path of that cell, so we know which row is. So we're going to say let index path equal the table view index path for the cell. Okay, so as long as we're able to get that index path out of there, then setting the expression in our face view controller is really easy. It's just going to be our model, emotional faces, index path.row, and here we want the expression, right? We want this part of the tuple. Okay, and similarly, for setting the title, we're not coming from a button anymore. We're coming from a table view row, so we want to do the same thing, but we want the name. That's this tuple. Okay, that's all we have to do there. That was easy to convert. Everybody cool with that? So now we've got navigation working. What's the most important thing we need to do in a table view to get it working? We need to implement its UI table view data source, right? That's how it gets the data into the table. Super simple. In this case, we obviously need number of rows in section. That's just going to return our emotional faces up there count. Right? However many of these emotional faces we have up here. And then we need cell for row and index path. That's also easy. We'll get the cell by dequeuing. Dequeue reusable cell with identifier. We called it emotion cell, I think. And here's the index path. And we'll just have the cell's text label, text, equal the emotional face's name, right? Index path.row, the name. That's the name of happy, sad, whatever. And we'll return the cell. Okay, that's it. We just converted this thing to use table view. It was easy. Hopefully all of you are super familiar with table view after all this. So let's go ahead and run and make sure that we've got our new upgraded version of this emotions thing's working well. Didn't forget some identifier somewhere or something like that. Okay, here we go. Here's our app. Here's our 3 things in our table view. Ooh, that's looking good so far. Let's click on one. That looks sad. It looks happy. Okay, we've converted our thing nicely. So now we're going to dive into these segues. the first thing we're going to do is add a button up here, which is going to do a modal segue to bring up an emotion editing view controller, something that lets us create a new one of these emotions. Okay, so it's going to have to let us specify the name, like sad, happy, or worried, and then it's going to have to let us specify the mouth and the eyes. Okay, and that's all it's going to do. All right, so how do we do that? Let's go back to our storyboard. And we need to drag out the storyboard that is going to be this modal view controller. Just because I didn't get a chance to do this earlier in the quarter, I'm going to make the UI for this thing be a static table view. Right? We've done dynamic table views, but we haven't done a static one. So let's go ahead and do a static one. So I'm going to drag out a table view. Here it is, right here. And I'm going to make it static. So I'm going to click on the table view in here and change it from being content dynamic to content static. By the way, I didn't really talk about this. I should have, I suppose. But how do you define how many rows there are in a static table? Okay, you're going to hold Control-Shift and click on the table, so that you can drill down to what you want. You don't want the controller, you don't want the table view, you want the section, okay? Because in a static table, you could have multiple sections. You want to be able to edit a certain section. You click on that, now it's selected, and so in the inspector, table view section, you see rows. And I can change this to be 4 rows. Now, why do I need 4 rows? Well, I need the name, I need the eyes, I need the mouth, and also I'm going to have one row which is a preview of what the face is going to look like. Okay, so you can see as you're choosing your eyes and mouth what you're actually doing. So that's why I need 4 rows. You can also put headers and footers in here, but I actually am going to leave this in plain style and not have any headers and footers because it kind of doesn't need any headers and footers. All these 4 rows go together. Okay, so we don't need to do that. We, of course, are going to need a subclass of UI table view controller to control this MVC, so let's go ahead and create that. The subclass of UI table view controller. Now this is an interesting naming thing right here. I'm going to call this my expression editor view controller. Notice I'm not calling it my expression editor table view controller. Now this is purely an art of programming thing. I tend to not name my static table views with the word table in there. And the reason for that is I'm mostly using static table here just to help me lay out the UI. I'm not using its table viewness very much, okay, like I would be if it was dynamic rows. So I tend to not put the word table. It's up to you. You can certainly call it expression editor or table view controller if you wanted. I like mine expression editor view controller. But you understand why I'm calling it expression editor, right? Because it's going to edit an expression, a facial expression here. We'll put it in the same place we put everything else. Here it is. I'm going to clean out all this stuff right here. I don't need any of this table view data source stuff because it's a static cell. I'm not going to allow deletion or anything like that. We're not going to be doing navigation out of it. So we have this nice empty expression editor. And let's make sure that in our storyboard we go and change the identity of this guy to be this expression editor. Otherwise, we won't be able to wire up any outlets or any things like that. Okay, let's start, before we build our UI for this, let's just put a cancel button in here and get this modal segue going. So let's do the modal segue. We're going to modal segue from this emotions. This is where all our emotions are, sad, happy, etc. I'm going to put a little bar button item in there. So I'm going to search for bar button item. Here it is. I'm going to drag it up here. When I inspect it, there's actually some pre-canned bar button items for common things you want to do, like add, which is what we're going to do, cancel, or redo, all these things. You can pick these and they'll have standard icons, standard words in there. So in here, we're adding an emotion, so I'm going to hit add. It happens to be a plus sign. And I'm just going to control drag from that to my new editing view controller. And I'm not going to do show or show detail. I'm going to do present modally. Okay? And that's going to take over the whole screen and put this MVC up and allow me to add a new emotion or whatever in here. Now, how do we get out of this? If I were to run this right now, you'll see that it works in a manner of speaking, but it really kind of kills my whole app. My app will be dead as soon as I do that. Let's go here. This is working fine. I click on this plus. This thing comes up, and I'm dead now. There's nothing I can do. I can't get out of here. This has taken over my app, and I haven't provided any way to get out of it. Okay, so let's start by adding a cancel button. We're just going to make it so we can cancel out of this. I'm going to put it as a bar button item in a navigation controller. So I'm going to pick this thing and say, embed in navigation controller. Okay, so I put this in a navigation controller. So now I can put up on top of here a cancel button. I'm going to put it on the left. It's another bar button item. There happens to be a standard one for that as well. Cancel. And how do I make this cancel button work? How do I make it actually cancel? Well, this is where I do the dismiss. So let's wire this up, target action, to a method that does the dismiss. So let's go into automatic mode here. We've got our new expression editor view controller. I'm going to control drag from the cancel button over here, do an action. Okay, the bar button item is going to be the argument. I'm going to call this cancel, of course. And it's going to cancel. And in here, I need to dismiss. But remember, I can't send dismiss to myself. Dismiss is a view controller thing, but I can't dismiss myself. I have to send it to my presenting view controller. So all view controllers know who presented them, if any. It could be nil. Okay, you might not have been presented by another one. And I'm just going to ask my presenting view controller, please dismiss whoever you've presented, which is me. And yes, please do it animated. And I don't need to find out when it's finished dismissing, so I'll just leave that off. Okay, so now if we run, and we go over here and we hit the plus, it comes up, here's our table view, we haven't done a UI yet, but if we hit cancel, it goes back, it dismisses us. Okay, so we're in good shape. So now let's go ahead and do our UI. Let's go back to our storyboard here and add our UI for these four things. Again, we want the name, like sad, happy, whatever. We want a little preview face, and then we want the eyes and the mouth. So I'm just going to start dragging this stuff out, and we'll start working on making it look good over time. So for the name, obviously I'll need a text field, so I'm just going to drag that out. Notice that all these cells are of type, if you look at the cell types here, they're all custom cells because I'm going to be putting custom UI in each of them. We'll configure that in a second. What about here in our little face view thing? What are we going to do to show our face? Well, I'm going to start by doing a face view. UI view. Yeah, let's put a generic UI view in here. I'll even put some nice auto layout in here on this one. Is that it? Yeah, and we'll do reset to suggested constraints. Check our constraints, make sure it looks good. Yeah, that looks good to me. We'll inspect the identity and make it be a face view so we get a nice face in there. So there's a good face. So we got the text field face. What about for our eyes and mouth? How are we going to set our eyes and mouth? I'm going to use something that I haven't shown you yet, which is a segmented control. So segmented control looks like this. Okay, we'll drag that one in here, drag one in here as well. And a segmented control lets you choose from a number of items, up to maybe 4 or 5, like a fixed number of items. Well, that's perfect for our eyes and mouth, because we only have 3 kinds of eyes positions and 5 kinds of mouth. And when you inspect it, right here, you can say how many different choices you want. So for eyes, we want 3 segments. And here for the mouth, we're going to need 5. Okay, right? Frown, smile, smirk, grin, neutral, whatever. And then you can just edit these. You just double click on them. So here, let's say eyes open. Here we'll say eyes closed. And of course, our favorite one, which is squinting. And then down here, we'll have frown and smirk and, oops, sorry, neutral and what, the grin, I think. And then we had smile. Okay, so there's our UI. So we want to make some of these things look a little better. Like this text field right here, there's quite a few things we want to set about this text field. One thing is we really don't need a little border. Let me zoom way in so you can see here. We don't really need this border around. It's in a text field row, so that's kind of its own border. So we're going to go down here and say border off, so it's not going to have any border. Also, I want the font to be quite a bit larger. Let's say 24 point would be good. We'll have it be centered, the text be centered. There's no reason to have it left or right aligned. Let's use placeholder text. That's really cool. I'm going to put name in here as the placeholder text. That way I don't need a label on the left that says name. This is the name of this emotion. I'll just put this placeholder there and it'll be obvious to users. Oh, that's the name. And so they'll just click there and start typing. And also for the keyboard, I'm going to have it auto-capitalize every word so that, if you say sad, it'll be capital S-A-D. It'll just look nicer in my other table, I think. And then finally, what about the auto layout here? Where do we want this to appear? Well, I think we just want this thing to be centered in there, so I'm going to pick centered horizontally and centered vertically. I just control dragged to this row. And so that's good enough. You notice that it's yellow, right? Why is it yellow? Because my constraints don't match what's on screen, so I can fix that in my document outline. Indeed, so here's that yellow. I go up here. I click on this. I'll use update frames here to misplace it. It moves name into the right spot. Okay, we already have our auto layout and everything for the face view. How about this guy down here? Let's zoom in again and look. But I'm actually going to put another constraint on here to show you a little more sophisticated constraints, which is, do I ever want to allow this to spill off the edges? In other words, am I going to allow the system to make this table view so narrow that it wouldn't even fit these? And the answer is no way. I would never want the table view to be that narrow. I always want it to be wide enough to at least fit all these buttons. So I'm going to control drag from this right edge over to this to do the trailing space. Okay, so it creates this I-beam right here that you're very familiar with. If we can click on it. There it is. But I don't actually want it to be 75. I want it to be 0 all the way over to the edge. But I actually don't want it to be equal to 0, because then that means that edge is always going to be pinned over there. And that's going to stretch my segmented control out. And I do want the segmented control to be, fit into its text. But I don't want it to be stuck over here. So what I'm going to do is make it to be greater than or equal to 0. So we have not seen this kind of constraint where you're not setting it equal to something, you're setting it greater than equal. And that's what I'm saying is the distance between this edge and right here must be at least 0. So it can't be negative. It can't have pushed off the edge. You see that? That's going to keep my table view big enough to do this. And now, of course, I need to do the same thing on the other side of this. We'll control drag over here, leading space, and we'll click on this one, and we'll say 0 as well, and we want this to be greater than or equal. So I'm just guaranteeing that that thing is going to be greater than or equal to. Okay? Now, let's double check all of our things here. So we've got the trailing space and leading space. So this one also I probably want in the middle, so I'm going to control drag, okay, and say I want horizontally and vertically. Okay, so it's not where it's supposed to be, so I'm going to update its frame right here. And it looks good. It's where it's supposed to be. I'm guaranteed that it's never going to spill out over the edges because I put that side constraint in. Let's do the exact same thing with this one right here. Control drag, center it vertically, control drag, center it horizontally, control drag to the edge. Like this. It's the trailing space. Let's click on here. We want it to be greater than or equal to 0. And same thing over here. This, the leading edge. Click on that. We want that to be greater than or equal to 0. Okay, get that right? Did I say greater than or equal to there? Yes, I did. Okay, this one also not positioned properly. No problem. We go over here. Update frames. Looking good. Okay, no auto layout issues. All right. So here's our UI here. Looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and run this and just see what our UI looks like. See if we got everything where we wanted, and things are centered, things are the right size, all that business. Okay, so go over here, bring it up. Looking pretty good. The only thing is, that face, I'd like that face to be as big as possible. Look how the eyes are so little that they're almost like solid eyes. Really, I'd like that row in the table to be a square. Since my face is a circle, I'd like it to be a square. So how can I make that a square? Hopefully all of you know this from your homework assignment, how to control the height of something. I'm just going to go into my code right here for my expression editor. And I'm just, for that row, I'm going to have the table view's height for row. Okay? I'm going to say if the index path we're talking about, row equals 1, because that's the second one down, that's where my face is. I'm kind of hardwiring this. We could probably use constants, all that stuff in here. Then I'm going to return the table view's bounds.size.width. So I'm going to make the height equal to the width. That way it'll be a square. Otherwise, I'm going to return our super classes because we're overriding this function, right? So table view, height for row at, and the table view is our table view, and the height is at this index path that it's asking us for right here. Okay? So everybody got that? So let's run and see if it makes that thing square. It should make that face square. All right, let's go back here, click, and sure enough, we've got a nice big square face here. Okay, so this is excellent. We've got our UI exactly the way we want. Now we just need to hook up our outlets and actions to this thing. We're going to need outlets to these two segmented controls right here and an outlet to this name so we can get the name and build an expression out of the settings of this switch. And then obviously we're going to need to be able to set our face view to reflect that as well. So let's go do that. Go back to our storyboard here. Like that. This up. Let's close that. All right. We'll zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so let's create outlets for these two things and for this name. So control drag over here. Call that our name text field. We'll control drag from this guy down here. We'll call this our eye control. And we'll drag from this one. Call that our mouth control. Okay, so we got our nice outlets there. Let's go ahead and think about the model of this controller. What does it do? It's an editor. It edits an expression, and a named expression actually. So it clearly has something which is the name. Okay, so we'll make the name, we'll have that be our name text field text. And if we don't have a name text field yet, like we're pre-loaded, we'll just return an empty string. Okay, so that's the name part. And of course, we have an expression as well. Let's go to facial expression. And we'll return by creating a facial expression. And here is its constructor. Make it a little easier to see when we're narrow here like this. Okay, so how are we going to set the eyes? We're going to look at our eye control and see what the eyes are. How do we set the mouth? We're going to look at our mouth control. So to make this easy, I'm going to make a little private var here, actually a let. I'm going to call this my eye choices. Okay, these are the three choices in my segmented control right there. It's just going to be a little array that has facial, z equals an array with facial expression dot eyes. And we've got open, closed, and squinting. Those are the three different things in our segmented control. So now to make this eyes thing, I can just return here my eye choices, and the index I'm going to use is my eye control. And the way you get which of the segments is picked in a segmented control is with the method in segmented control called selected segment index. Selected segment index. And of course, again, our eye control might not be set yet, in which case we'll default to just doing segment 0. Okay? Everybody see what we're doing there to do that? And same thing with the mouse. We'll have some mouth choices here. These are facial expression dot mouth dot, what do we got here? Frown. We got smirk. We got neutral. We got grin, we got smile. Okay, do the same thing here. We'll say mouth choices. So mouth control this time. Selected segment index. And again, we'll default to 0. So everyone see how we've created our facial expression from our UI? This is essentially our model. It's a read-only model. You could imagine designing this to not be read-only, where you might want to have this editor start with some expression to set, but we're just going to do this to make it easy, read-only. One other thing we want to do is whenever these are changed over here, well, for now, every time someone clicks on one of these, we're just going to print on the console what our expression is. So let's create a little target action from this guy, control drag. We'll call it update face, because that's what we're going to need to do is update this face up here. We don't need any arguments to it. Okay, so this update face is going to have to change this face to reflect the eyes and stuff. But for now, I'm just going to say print our name equals our expression. So like sad equals, you know, frown plus closed eyes or whatever. Okay, and they'll have this one do the exact same thing. Just wire this up to the same action. Everybody cool? So we just had outlines and actions to make our thing work here. So let's go run. See if our UI is basically working. It needs to be hooked up to the rest of our app, but still we want to make sure it's functioning properly. So let's go here. Let's add. We'll call this, oh, here's an interesting thing. See, when I click on these, it's selected this row. I didn't want this row to be selected like in a table view sense. I just wanted it to edit this name right here. So that's not good. So we'll have to fix that. But let's go ahead and put in a test name here. We'll say test. Return. Oh, return doesn't get rid of the keyboard. So that's bad UI, because now it's really hard to get to these things down here. I can get to them because this is a scroll view. Table view is a scroll view, but it's still kind of bad UI, so we've got to fix that as well. So let's pick eyes closed and see if our console is saying anything. And sure, it's saying test equals eyes closed, mouth frown. That looks right. Eyes closed, mouth frown. Let's say squinting grin. Squinting grin. Okay, so it looks like our UI is working, but it's got these two problems. So let's fix the problem where it's selecting this row in the table view sense when we click in there, and let's fix the problem where return key is not resigning first responder and making the keyboard go away. So both of those are easy to do. We can do most of this in the storyboard. So let's go back to our storyboard full screen here. So the way to make it so that it doesn't select rows in here is just to select our table view, and when you do your inspector on a table view, you'll see there's selection down here in the table view selector. We want to change that to no selection. That means rows are not selected in our table view. You almost always want this in a static table view. Rarely are you selecting the rows in a static table view. Sometimes you might be, but rarely are you doing that. And the other problem was our text field right here. We wanted it to do resign first responder. So I'm going to show you a little trick here, which is how we can wire this text field up to our view controller as a delegate without any code, okay, to do the wiring up. I'm just going to control drag from my text field up to my view controller. Remember, this little yellow thing at the top here represents my view controller. So I'm going to control drag right there. And when I do, look, I can hook up outlets. And I'm going to hook up this text field's delegate right there. So now this view controller is the delegate of this text field. Now, we still have to go back here and make it be a UI text field delegate. And, of course, we still want to implement our text field should return. Not should clear. Text field should return. And we're just going to have the text field resign first responder. No, not responds to. Resign first responder and return true. Okay, so I just wanted to use that as a trick to show you can control drag to set outlets of things as well if you want. Okay, so we fixed our two problems right there. So our UI should be looking good now. Here it is. Go here. Okay, let's try the text again. Let's say test and return. Resigns first responder. And notice when I clicked on test, it didn't click this row. When I click down here, it's not clicking this row. Even if I click on the edges of it, it's still not selecting it. Okay, what about the face? We got to get that face so that it's updating based on what's going on here. Now, we've offered the option of squinting right here. So really, what class needs to be in here? What's the only class that does squinting? It's that blinking face view controller, right? So we need to put an MVC in here. Okay, blinking face view controller is an MVC. We can't use face view, which is what I have in here now. Face view doesn't know how to do squinting. So we need to put an MVC. So this is where we're going to do an embedded view controller. So let's do the embedded view controller. Okay, we're going to go here. Right now we have its face view inside here, so we're just going to get rid of that face view. We don't want that. Oops, I deleted the entire row. Sorry. Is that my face view right there? Yeah. So we'll delete the face view. And instead of having a face view, I'm going to go over here and look for a container view. container. There it is, container view. I'm going to drag this container view in here. I'm going to do the exact same thing as I did before. I'm going to use my, let's zoom in a little so we can see it a little better. I'm going to use my dash blue lines to place this thing where I want. I'm still going to do reset to suggested constraints. So I'm going to check that, make sure that this is all hooked up right. It appears to be hooked up right. Look what also appeared. It's kind of hidden. It's kind of afraid. There it is, right here. Okay. When we created this embed segue, it also created this new MVC right here. Okay. This is the MVC whose self.view is going to appear right here. And all the auto layout constraints are going to apply to it and everything. So it's going to be fit in there and everything. So what do we want this to be? Well, we want it to be a blinking face view controller. So I'm going to go here, go to identity. I'm going to select this, go to identity and say blinking face view controller. Of course, I have to still build the UI of this thing. And of course, it has a face view in it. So I'm going to, again, try and copy and paste. Didn't work last time I did it, but we'll try again. Paste. There we go. Okay, and so we're going to make it fit perfectly in here. As usual, we'll go ahead and reset to suggested constraints. And of course, this face view right here needs to be wired up as an outlet of this blinking face view controller. And how am I going to do that? Same way I did that text field delegate. So we're control drag now from the view controller to this face view and wire it up. We don't have to bring up the code in a side-by-side window. Especially this is a pain for blinking view controller because it's a subclass of it, superclass rather, that we're hooking up to, etc. Okay, so I've built this embedded view. I've created the MVC exactly the way I want. And so now if we run, we should have that blinking view controller embedded inside of this into that row. And of course, it should be square and all those things, just as if it were the regular face view. And sure enough, there it is. Okay, now how do we make it so that when we change these things, it changes this? Well, this is just a segue right here. So in our prepare for segue, we're going to grab onto that blinking view controller. And then every time things change, we'll just tell the blinking view controller what its expression is. So let's give this thing a name. We'll call this our embed face segue right here. And let's go back to our editor. And it's the thing we're segueing from, so it's the thing that gets to prepare. So let's go prepare for segue. And inside this prepare for segue, all we really need to do is grab onto that face view controller. So let's create a little private var, which we'll call our face view controller. It's going to be of type blinking face view controller. And it's not set initially, so we'll have it be an optional. And here I'm going to say if the segue's destination view controller is, actually we'll even say if let. Let's say if let controller, we don't even need to do that. Actually, I can do an even easier way to do it. Let's just say face view controller equals the segue's destination as a blinking view controller. And if it's not a blinking view controller, it won't work. And of course, we probably want to check our identifier here. So we'll say if the segue's identifier equals, what did I call it? Embed face. Then we'll do this. Okay, so all I did here when I'm preparing is just grab on to that view controller. So now I have the view controller. So for example, when update face happens, okay, instead of printing out on the console, I can just say that my face view controller's expression equals my expression. Right? And my expression is this thing right here. You cool with that? So let's go see that. Okay, so we go here, we add eyes closed, looking good, and the frown there, grin. Notice that it started out with the wrong face though, so probably when I grab that face view controller right here, probably want to update it right away with my expression, whatever expression I have now. In other words, as soon as that embedded segue gets embedded, I want to have it update with my, my face. But it's working, and it even works with squinting. Okay? So we got squinting even happening in here. All right. We got this awesome system here, this awesome MVC for editing an emotion right, with the emotion's name and its face. So how do we communicate what we just edited back? And that's through unwinding. So let's go ahead and create an unwind segue back to our presenter. Okay, and let's just, so we can see it, this whole thing, what we're doing here. So we're going to create an unwind from a done button in this, and it's going to unwind back to this guy. And when it unwinds, we'll communicate the expression and the name of the expression that was chosen here in this editor. Now, what's the first thing when we want to do an unwind? We need to create that magic method to unwind to. That's always the first thing you're going to do when you're unwind. So that's over here in this emotions view controller. So let's go over to the emotions view controller and create that magic method. Put it right here at the top. Okay, it's got to be an IB action. Okay, it's just a function. We can call it anything we want. I'll call this add emotional face, because that's what it's going to do. It's going to add an emotional face to this array right here. And I'll say from segue, UI storyboard segue. And this satisfies the second thing we have to do, which has one and only one argument. And it's a storyboard segue. And inside here, we will use the segue information to get the expression that we chose. So now let's go back to our storyboard and wire up that unwind, which we do right here. So I'm going to add a done button right here. Back down here. This is bar button. Here it is. Okay, I wanted a standard one again. This is the done button. You see all these standard ones. We had add for the other one, cancel for the other one, done for this one. So we have done. And I'm just going to control drag over to there. No, up here. Okay, so this exit button. When I let go, look what appeared there. Add emotional face from. Notice that it puts the little from that was the external name on the end of it. It's kind of a backwards compatibility with Objective-C there. And so I click that I want that connection, and now it's made that segue. Now, where is that segue? If I zoom out, am I going to be able to see that on my storyboard? No, you don't see it. So where are things that you can't see in your storyboard? Where do you go to find them? Yeah, the document outline here. So let's go over to the document outline, and sure enough, right here, look at that, unwind segue to add emotional faces. We could give this segue a name. Maybe we would call it add emotion, because that's what it does, right? It calls this add emotional face, so it's kind of an add emotion segue. Now, we could transfer our information kind of either way, either in the prepare in this guy, but I usually like to do it in this guy, because this is the guy who I would have to create some public API to add an emotional face or something. So I'm just going to have this guy in his special method. He's going to ask the editor there, what is your expression and name? And it's going to add it to his model here. All right, so we're going to say if we can let the editor, basically we'll call it editor, if we can let the editor equal the segue's what? Source. It's the source of the segue. We're segueing from the editor to this guy. So this as a expression editor view controller. So if I'm able to get the editor, then I'm just going to say emotional faces, not K-guard, emotional faces, append, and I want to append a tuple, and the tuple is going to have the editor's name and the editor's expression. That's it. So unwind. Super simple. All right, so we got worried, we got happy, we got sad. Let's add another one. Let's go, I don't know, let's go green. Okay, this face looks like contentment to me. He looks content. So we're going to call this one content. Content, there it is. Okay, so we've got this named content, eyes closed, grin. I'm going to hit done right here. It's going to unwind and add that, hopefully, and it didn't show. Anyone have an idea why it didn't show there? Because we appended it to our model, but we never told the table view to update. Okay, so this is a common thing you'll do. You'll update your model, you're like, oh, my table view doesn't work, and we just need to do table view here, reload data. Cause it to call all of its UI table view data source methods again. Hopefully, you experienced that maybe in your homework assignments. You're used to this particular forgetfulness. But here we go. Try again. Okay, we'll do content again. I liked content. Content. There it is. And content was, what did I say? Grin, eyes closed. Yes, looks content. Done. There's content. We click on it. We've got content. We've got worried. We've got happy. Whoops, happy. Okay? Everybody understand that unwinding? Everyone understand the modal? Let's go take a look at this on iPad. See what it looks like here. Okay, let's make this a lot smaller. Well, is that small as we can make it now? There we go. Okay, so here it is on iPad. We'll go landscape here. It's working, right? Sad, happy, worried. Let's add another one. Whoa, big face. Now, this is the kind of UI that in your final project, you're going to get dinged on the UI part of the rubric, because this is horrible UI. Okay, look at the tiny little things at the bottom, gigantic face. This is the classic, oh, my app works on iPad and iPhone, okay, because I just clicked the button that said do iPad, okay? Sometimes you have to do more to make things work on both platforms. And in this case, clearly this is bad UI. And in fact, it's an opportunity to make points on your rubric of your final project by implementing an iPad-specific idiom. In this case, that's what we want to do. This clearly wants to be in a popover. Okay, when we click this little plus, we want this little editor to appear right here in a nice little popover. So what do we need to do that? It couldn't be simpler. We're going to just go back to our storyboard here, and we're going to change this segue, which is currently our modal segue, right? The modal segue from emotions right here over to this editor, from being modal to being a popover. Now we know that it automatically is going to adapt to being like modal, full screen, on the iPhone. So by changing it to popover, it's going to work now on both platforms. But we're going to see a little bit of problems here. All right, so let's try it. Plus, nice. Okay, you're maybe not seeing this very well because of the high resolution being scaled way down. But it's picked a reasonable size. It's a little bigger than it needs to be. It's a reasonable size. But there's actually one thing that's wrong with this UI, which is this cancel button right here. Okay? In a popover, you don't have cancel buttons. Because watch, if I click over here, it canceled it. So I don't need this cancel button right here. I need it on iPhone, but I don't need it on iPad. So let's add a little bit of code to take this cancel button out if we're actually in a popover. And the way I'm going to tell them I'm in a popover is I'm going to look at my popover presentation controller and see if my arrow is pointing any way. And if my arrow is pointing somewhere, then I must be in a popover. If I don't have an arrow, then I'm probably over full screen. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's go back here to our editor. And in our editor, I'm going to do this in view will appear. It's a nice late in the game time to do it. So in view will appear, super view will appear. I'm just going to say in here, if I can, and here I'll make it wide so that I have pick good variable names here. If I can let popover presentation controller equal my navigation controllers popover presentation controller. Now, why am I getting the navigation controller's popover presentation controller? Because it's actually the highest level MVC that's in the popover. Okay? Also, that cancel button is in the navigation controller, right? It's part of the navigation items for the navigation controller. So if I'm not in a navigation controller, this whole thing is kind of useless anyway. So here I'm going to say if the popover presentation controller's arrow direction equals unknown, or well, let's say if it doesn't equal unknown, so it points somewhere, then I must be in a popover. So I'm going to remove from my navigation items my left bar button item. Okay, remember navigation item is what controls what bar buttons appear when you are in a navigation controller. Okay, so here we go. We click, no cancel button, which is good. And we'll run it on iPhone in a second, and we'll make sure the cancel button is still there. Okay, what's another problem here, though? The problem is this is a little too big. It's kind of got this extra space down here at the bottom that we don't want. Okay, and in fact, if I go this way, okay, then, and I like slide this out and bring this up, now it's a little too small. So it's either a little too small or too big. That's because it doesn't know how big this thing is. Okay, so it's just picking kind of standard sizes for these particular orientations. So let's teach this MVC, this editor MVC, how big it is. And we're going to do that by adding up all the heights of all the rows and seeing which row is the widest. By doing that, we'll be able to see how big this section in the table view is. So we'll do that, and view will appear also. I'm going to say here var size equals table view dot. Well, really it'd be nice if I had a method called minimum size for section 0. Okay, if it could just tell me the size. And unfortunately, table view doesn't have a thing like that. But luckily for you, I have such a thing right here as an extension to table view. And we don't have time to type it all in, so that's why I quick typed it. But you can see it's pretty easy. It just goes through all the rows in the section that you asked, and it gets the cell at that row, or even creates a cell at that row if necessary. And then it uses this really cool method here, system layout size fitting, UI layout fitting compressed size. This guy right here uses auto layout to say what's the smallest this thing can be. Okay? So this is a really cool little function that you can do in UI view. By the way, notice I'm sending that to the content view of each cell. We didn't talk about content view, but each table view cell has a content view. That's where all the contents really are. And that's the thing you want to ask to apply all the auto layout rules to see if it'll fit. So then here I'm just getting the one that's the widest, okay, maxing the width, and here I'm adding the heights of the rows. Okay, the height for row is just the height of the row by asking the delegate here. Okay, so good. So we got the size. This is the size, but actually we got a little trickiness to do here because we've got that square face view. I still want it to be square even when I shrink it down. So I'm going to take the size's height and remove the height that it got for that index path that the little face is at. That's row 1. Section 0. So I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to add back the width of the table view. Actually, the width of the table view I calculated, which is size. Okay, so I've just added it square, so it's square in the new smaller size. Hopefully everybody understands what I did there. Looks like I'm missing something here. Yes, parentheses. Set it as our preferred content size equals that size. So this preferred content size, remember, is the thing that tells the system this is how big this MVC should be when it's in a popover. So let's see if that worked. All right, so slide it out here and click. Perfect size right there, right? Let's do it in landscape. Click, perfect size. Okay, so that's how you get your popovers to fit their size exactly. You've got to figure out what their size is. Okay, that might be a little bit of work, but once you figure out what their size is, especially using that nice system fitting thing, you can do that. So the last thing I want to do is go back to the iPhone and see what damage we've wrought over there by doing this, putting this popover business in. Okay, so here's our iPhone version. So still working here, plus it's still adapting. It didn't show it in a popover, even though we changed this segue to be a popover on all platforms. It does that adaptive behavior to make this happen. Okay, it's still working fine though. Call this happy. Okay, works like a charm. Let's take a look over here. This is landscape mode on the phone. Oh, this is pretty good, I'm sure. Whoa, big forehead guy. Okay, now again, you could argue, well, this is just the way it makes it be, but this is bad. This is bad UI. I mean, really, if you had an app and you bought it and it did this, you'd be like, what the? Who wrote that? Now, this is a strange situation where on an iPhone, I actually think this would look a ton better as a popover, wouldn't it? Because the popover is a nice minimum size. So if we had this thing where you clicked on this plus and it made a nice little popover here, wow, that would be just really cool in landscape mode. So how can I make it stop adapting? Because that's, well, the problem here is when I hit plus, it's adapting to the fact that it's on a compact width, all right? And it's turning it to full screen. So I don't want that. I want it to still be popover. So let's use that delegate method thing I was talking about. to make it stop doing that. So that delegate stuff happens in the prepare for this segue. That prepare happens over here in the motions view controller. We already have a prepare for that. It's preparing a different segue. It's the segue that actually shows the face. So here I'm just going to say else, because I'm not talking about that segue, I'm talking about a different one. Else if the segue's destination is the editor, expression editor, view controller, okay? Then I want to prep my popover presentation controller, so I'm the delegate. So I'm going to say if I can let the popover presentation controller equal the segue destination popover presentation controller. Remember that the presentation controller is always on the thing being presented. It's controlling the presentation itself, not the thing that's presenting, but the thing presented. So now I'm just going to tell this popover presentation controller to set its delegate to be myself. Okay, and then of course I have to go up here and say that I am a UI popover presentation controller delegate. All the methods are optional, so I am nicely implementing that. But I'm going to implement the one which is this adaptive behavior thing. It's called adaptive presentation style for view controller, trait collection. Right here. Go ahead and make the arguments a little easier to see. Okay, so this is the thing where it's asking the popover presentation manager, hey, do you want to control the adapting behavior, right? How it adapts, and I do. And what is it I want to do? Well, when it's in landscape mode in an iPhone, I want it to be popover. So basically, what is the trait collection of the iPhone in landscape mode? It's vertically compact. It's the only case that's vertically compact. No other device has vertically compact. So I'm just going to say if the trait collection, okay, because that's passed along to me here as an argument. If I'm going to say if its vertical size class equals compact, then what's the adaptation mode I want? .none. Do not adapt. Just be your normal popover self. However, if the trait collection horizontal size class is compact, I do want to adapt. And in fact, I want to adapt to over full screen. By the way, over full screen means full screen and don't show the view controller behind it. Over, what's it called? Oh, full screen, just dot full screen, is go over the whole screen, but let the one that I'm on top of show through. And usually if we do that one, we blur. We put a blur background or something like that. You might check out UI visual effects if you want to do that in your final project. UI visual effects, great way to do a blur. Otherwise, I'm going to return none, because otherwise I'm regular width or height or something. I'm on an iPad, basically, probably, or maybe I'm on a iPhone 6 Plus or something like that, or iPhone 7 Plus. But I don't want to adapt in those cases either. All right, so this will control the adaptive behavior, but one thing I have here is destination. We don't want destination because the destination of this segue is a UI navigation controller. Okay, we want here this destination view controller that we calculated by looking inside the navigation controller. So this is destination view controller. Okay, so now let's run this. Oops.
No segue dot.
Oh, no segue dot. Yeah. Okay, there we go. So we got our destination view controller being this expression. Then we're going to become the popover presentation controller's delegate, and we'll implement this adaptive behavior where we don't do it in the case where we're vertically compact. So here this one is vertically regular, so it's not doing that, but in here we're vertically compact, and so this shows up as a popover. All right, that's it. Sorry to keep you so long today, and I will see you on Wednesday.
For more, please visit us at stanford.edu.